Hey everybody! In this month's Hero Arts video, I wanted to show you some sort of different things that you could do with the amazing Volcano set. Now, I had a card earlier this month with the Volcano set where I actually combined it with the other Heroscape for the waterfalls to make a perfect volcano scene. I think those work beautifully together. But today I wanted to show you that if you don't want to make a volcano card, this stamp set makes such gorgeous mountains. So I have two different ways that you can use this set today. And first I wanted to show you that I'm just using one of these non-slip vinyl templates that I cut down to move my cardstock out of the corner of the MISTI so that I can have the mountains that I'm making out of the volcano be off edge stamped. So I'm taking the more solid of the images in the set. So basically the one that you would stamp first typically, if you stamp in the order that I do. And I'll be repeating this same image down the card for sort of a foreground, background, mountain scene, all in a bunch of different Hero Arts blues, which that was probably predictable. So as long as you have the template in the corner, and I've actually secured it with a little bit of painter's tape as well, you can just line your cardstock up against that and feel completely secure that your image is going to be stamped in the exact same place every time. So I am inking this up in my lightest color of blue, and I will list out all the ink colors for you. I'm just using the cubes here because this is a smaller image, and so it's just easier for me in my MISTI. Now, if you don't want that hard edge at the bottom, I'm going to show you two ways to get rid of it. The first is just to dab the extra ink off with a paper towel. That will soften that bottom edge and make that straight line disappear. So that is completely up to you how you want to do it. I will show you another way here in just a second. Now, if you want to repeat these mountains, and I'm just going to speed this up because it's a little bit repetitive, but you want there to be sort of an ombre look, you can just ink it twice. So I'm using the same color of ink, but I'm stamping it once and then I'm stamping it again. And so as you approach the foreground of this image, the mountains will appear darker, just like they would to your eye if you were observing them in nature. Now, one of my friends pointed out, and she even posted a photograph, that this particular sequence that I'm making with this volcano stamp actually looks like the Carrara Mountains in Italy, which I've never seen. But then she posted a photo, and sure enough, it looked just like it. Now here I've left the hard straight edge because I want to show you how to get rid of that at the end, or at least soften it a little bit. This is such an easy technique if you are doing a landscape sort of scene on your card with elements that need to be darker in the front. Now as the ink gets darker, it also gets easier to cover up those edges of the volcano mountain, as I'll call it, as your ink is getting a little bit darker as it moves towards the viewer. And then I'll use my darkest color in the very, very foreground, which is navy. This is such a beautiful color and it's perfect for the foreground of this image. Now I will be wiping off the bottom of that with a paper towel to make that fade just a little bit. But I'll also be doing some ink blending to make those lines disappear. And then where the mountain images are overlapped, I'm going to use a white gel pen to bring those details back. This image is so easy to go over. What in my rendering of this is the snow that's sort of coming down the mountains. So I'll be filling that back in with a white gel pen, and I'll be adding some ink where there's a little bit of spacing between the mountains, so it just sort of more smoothly transitions down towards the bottom. But I love the progression of color here. It's so much fun. And this is such a great image, and it doesn't have to be a volcano if you don't want it to be. But before I finish that up, I wanted to show you a second way that you can get a really different look from this stamp. And that is to layer dye inks and pigment inks together, which is just one of my favorite things to do. So here I will ink this stamp up in the darkest ink that I'm using, which is navy, and make sure that that is completely covered. And this one will be off the card edge a little bit as well, so that you can see that left edge of what I'm imagining is a snowy mountain. I am going to ink this twice because of the ink layering that I'll be doing. I need this bottom layer to be really dark. Otherwise, you could leave that sort of distressed look underneath, which I actually really like. And I think it has sort of an organic look for the top of that mountain. Now you'll want to take the layering portion of the stamp, so the next layer, not the top layer with the lava coming out. I'm just using the second, more detailed layer here. On my previous volcano card, that was the layer that was black. So on this one, I'm going to reverse that, and these are very easy to line up. If you see that little hump way over on the right, that's a great starting point for you to line this layering stamp up with. It's very easy to do. And then all the other sort of detailed pieces fall into place after you have that lined up. So once that's all set up, I'll pick that up with the lid of my MISTI, make sure that it's back against that vinyl template again. And then I'm going to be adding some white pigment ink to the top of this for what seems to me like a Japanese themed, like Mount Fuji sort of mountain scene. So grab your unicorn pigment ink, and I'm just checking a little bit just to make sure that I'm not transferring any ink that might have been on the stamp first to my white ink pad, because that's always a fear that we crafters have. And then I will stamp the detailed layering portion on top of here and give it that sort of frosted mountain look that you might have in a Japanese painting or somewhere in the Alps. And I just love the way that it looks. If you want to stamp it again to make the snow more pronounced, feel free to do that. I will be doing it again here. I will say that when you're layering 2 layers of a pigment ink, sometimes it's helpful to dry them in between. Just depends on what look you're going for. But it seems to go on a little bit more smoothly if you dry them in between, so that's what I like to do. You'll want to work with the exact same inks that you used the first time, and I have a dirty brush here that had some yellow on it. So I'm switching brushes to make sure that I'm really matching my ink color. It's always a good idea to test it first on a little scrap piece of paper. So I'm glad that I took that extra step. So you can see immediately you can fill in those gaps so that there's sort of a seamless mountain range there that is transitioning to the next mountain. Now, as I'm blending this, I'm really not worrying about those light parts on the mountain because, as I said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to add white gel pen detail to those. So don't worry about covering that up. Also, don't worry about where one stamped image goes on top of another image and then shows through those white areas, because the white gel pen can cover a multitude of sins. So I will transition to the second color and add that into sort of the corners. And the great thing about working from light to dark is this makes this part of the card super easy. Because with the darkest colors at the front, you don't have to worry about layering those lighter colors on top of that dark navy mountain in the front. All you have to do is worry about blending that line, because that navy is strong enough that it's going to be fine in front of those ink blended areas that you are now filling in. But it makes the design really super seamless, makes it look like a real mountain range, and it's just a fun way to sort of finish off this card. Now, I like to sort of hold the brush bristles to kind of hold them together if I'm working in a small space like I am right here. But Like I said, it's really nice not to have to worry about those white areas because I can just make that line disappear. And I'm actually going to be cutting off the bottom of this to sort of match up with that navy mountain. So you can sort of get in there in the little corners and that just absolutely vanishes. And then I can proceed to make that just a little bit darker if I need to. Then for the last color before I get to the navy, right there, that mountain, it's actually a very similar color. This is Deep Ocean is what I used for this layer, and it's similar to the layer before it, but it's not just darker, but it's a little different hue. So you want to make sure that you've picked the right inks that match. So sort of keep them in order when you're doing this kind of thing, but there's absolutely no straight edge there now. It's great, and it's ready for my white gel pen work. Touch up where you need to cover up some white space or cover up a hard edge. But that is a very easy way to transform a stamp image into something very different from what was intended. So I love the way this turned out. I hope that you can see the possibilities for this set, and thanks so much for watching.